Hello and welcome to Woodworks. My name is John Hall and today I'm with Anand here in his workshop in Santa Cruz County. Good morning, Olm.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting us along today.
Well, thanks for asking.
You've got a fabulous workshop here. How long have you been here?
20 years now, this year.
Wow. So
yeah, we're very grateful.
I imagine in that time you've created and seen a lot of nice pieces of furniture go out through these doors.
There's been some nice stuff.
How would you describe the type of woodworking that you do?
Well, I consider myself in the arts and crafts tradition. So it's, I'd say, neo-arts and crafts. And it comes from a desire to make something lovely to be in somebody's home or office.
Do you turn wood? Do you bend wood? Do you make large pieces? Do you make small pieces?
Primarily, I'm a cabinet maker because of my background is more architectural. And so I tend to do more casework. And so there is some turning and there's some bending and whatnot. It depends on the piece, but largely I consider them sort of like little houses or little shrines. And
you said your background is architectural.
I started out in carpentry. I was going to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing there. So I quit, and the apartments that I was living in were being doubled in size, and so I got a job right there. I'd roll out of bed at 10 till 8, go over there, be a carpenter's helper, and it actually turned into a career after. I'm looking back at it. At the time, it was convenient, but I really got into it, and I started out framing apartments, then houses, and then I got into trim, and then I got into remodeling. And then I went to the program in Fort Bragg for fine woodworking.
Is that the College of the Redwoods?
College of the Redwoods, yeah. And so at that time, Jim Krenoff was there, and he's I owe a lot to Jim. And so at that point, everything sort of made a big shift. And when I finished that, I knew I wanted to set up a shop, but I'm not one of those people that just can do things on a shoestring. When I walk up to a machine, I want the thing to work right. I don't want to be tinkering with it, and whatnot. So I got into the high-end carpentry work for these big, huge, multi-million-dollar homes and whatnot. And then over time, I have done that and worked in the shop also.
How long ago was it that you were at Fort Bragg?
That was in '86. I was there, the '86, '87 for 1 year.
So you've been in the fine woodworking business since then, really?
Yeah.
You said that you owe a lot to Jim Krenoff. What do you owe to him?
Well, he taught me how to see, really. And there's weights, measures, there's mass. There's balance, there's the horizontal line, and learning how to see is how you become a connoisseur. Like for wine, learning how to taste, because it just increases the enjoyment and the awareness and the understanding of what could be a very deceptively simple looking object. From across the room, a lot of it may look very similar, but the closer you get, there's differences become readily apparent.
When I talk to craftsmen like yourself, they often say something similar in the sense that they say when they see a piece of wood, it really says something to them. So I'd like to have a better understanding as to what do you mean by reading a piece of wood? So take this for instance, what type of wood is this?
I think it's a type of green heart, which is classified by color. And so there'll be, brown heart. And so this is yellow heart. And he called it Caribbean satinwood, I think for marketing purposes. But I think it's actually used for, building docks and stuff in South America. it has almost a metallic look about it, and it's got these little butterflies. And then farther up the piece, it changes, and you have this real ribbon effect.
Okay.
It's very different than this. And also this is very straight, and this has a sort of this arch-looking pattern. And so I didn't know exactly what would become of it, but it's like a diamond in the rough. You just recognize these things for being that. And I went and saw this client. It was a referral, and she had a solarium that needed a particular piece because her house was going to get shot for Sunset magazine or something. And so she told me what she wanted, and as usual, I'm completely clueless. And so then I said, sure, we'll think about it, and I'll do some sketches, you know. So on the way home, the thing about driving for me is it's very transpersonal. I've written a lot of poems driving around because there's sort of a trance-like effect. And so from out of nowhere came this idea. And so I sketched it up freehand. I was actually able to scale off of this drawing. From this rough sketch, then I took a ruler and cleaned it up. And then I scaled off of the drawing. So I knew it had to be 42 inches tall. And the way it turned out that it's about 40 inches wide, so it's almost a square. And it was primarily to hide the poker chips, but she also wanted a TV in there. And so, but she had this lovely Art Deco sculpture that was to sit on top. So I thought that if I had this thing where it would raise, then the sculpture could be there, but whenever they wanted to see the TV, the thing could go up and they could watch the TV, you know? The decorator had wanted something Japanesey, Tansu-ish. She wanted that look. So basically, I was doing a 21st century arts and crafts update of a traditional Japanese look.
So at what point in that process, did you realize you had a piece of wood that would be the exact match for the design and feel for the piece of furniture that you were looking to create?
Well, so it was on that drive home, so I had the idea, and then I remember this board. And so actually, when I first drew it, I drew it with 4 panels. It becomes 3 panels. It actually looks better with 3. Even numbers tend to be very boring, and so if you break them up, because it had, and also it had 3 drawers, but I made them equal size. So I got into this woven bronze look. And so that's what this part is to represent the woven bronze. But we didn't go there, and so the actual piece is in woven bamboo, which I got from Japan. I didn't weave it. These panels, they're scaled at this size right here, which has the little butterflies, and it has this sort of arching shape that goes all the way through. The front and back, they're very similar. This is what I was going to use for the top, is that ribbony, which came from over there, and then the solid drawer front had a little bit of that, but it had a little bit of the paneling, the little butterflies too. But this is a veneered piece, and that's why I can do this big cabinet out of this little thing, because I'm going to resaw this, and I'm going to probably get 5. I'd like to get 6, but it's not going to happen. I'm going to get 5 veneers, maybe just a scant 1/8 inch thick, that then I will glue to a substratum.
So you work at many different levels then. You work at perhaps an intellectual level when you're looking at the actual design.
I wouldn't call it intellectual though, but it's definitely feeling.
Yeah.
It's much more of a feeling level. And that's what I'm trying to convey in my work, is that feeling that I have goes into the work, and when things work right, it emanates upon completion. The energy that goes in emanates upon completion. There's easier ways to do things,
Right.
but they're just not very beautiful. I don't just produce things and put them in a gallery and hope they'll sell and whatnot, because that doesn't really work for me, because I'm much more service oriented. Somebody has a problem they want resolved, and I like to do that in something that will enhance their living environment, so that when they come home or they come into their office, it's a lovely experience, as opposed to, you know, the gnashing that's on the outside.
How much of a piece like this has been created using hand tools versus machine tools?
Well, some things you can only do by hand. And I guess maybe 20% of my work is done with machine tools.
20%.
Somewhere like that, yeah.
Okay.
And so the big grunt work. But the detailing is, you really need hand tools to do fine details.
Earlier, Olm, you talked about the way Japan has influenced your thinking and the style of some of the pieces that you've worked on. Could you talk to us about that?
I had been studying the Japanese architecture for a number of years, and then I saw this picture, and actually it was pretty recently, and for some reason everything sort of clicked. So this is a little Japanese tea house, and it appears that this window is supported on this bamboo post, and just seeing that, my mind took off in this direction. And then my wife and I are walking down the riverbed, the San Lorenzo River, and she finds this stick. And then when I see that stick, she says, "Oh, you should do something with this." And then I immediately saw this wall cabinet supported on this stick, sort of like this window seems to be supported on this bamboo post here.
Okay, so we can go inside in a second and take a look at how you've translated that idea into something now that hopefully will become a finished piece.
This is the stick my beloved found in the riverbed that led to this chain of events that's producing this cabinet here. And so it appears that it's sort of suspended off of this stick. This is a black acacia that fell down in a storm beside Highway 9 near my house. And I was able to salvage that. And I haven't had it that long, maybe only 5 years or something. And then this is koa, which is related. Well, they call it acacia koa to the black acacia. And so it's this is a piece that a luthier, a guy that's a wood supplier for luthiers, he had this chunk for, I think he told me, since the 1970s. It was too small to sell as a guitar top or back or something like that, so he had just had it laying around, and I talked him out of it. And so there's only just a few little scraps left over, so it's you know, maximizing the use. And so this is sort of a study in decay, because the acacia had been down, I don't know, 15 years, maybe even longer, and the sapwood had rotted off. And so that's why you get this is the natural edge, and you can see there's some funk happening here, and so I thought I would just leave that. So this is the natural edge on that koa piece. And so this has also got some decay going on that's making this discoloration here. And this brown, yellow brown is also part of decay. And like these little holes here, and well, you can't see it, but all around this side there's some decay. So it's the resurrection of this log. And it had this curve, So I made a curved drawer, and so these are bent laminations where I sawed these veneers and glued them up. And see, here's a turning example where I turned that, stuck this little thing in there, and of course it gets glued in. It's not quite finished. And then on the side here, I have a, instead of, metal extension, full extension guides are very common. Well, they actually, they used to be in wood before they made them in metal. And so it's a full extension drawer. And it's, perhaps you can smell the fragrance from there. It's
beautiful.
Port Orford cedar. And it's pretty idiosyncratic, but if somebody wants it, they can take it home.
Yeah, the colours in this are beautiful on the top there.
Oh, it's a magnificent plank, and I can't believe it's just laying beside the road there.
How do you finish areas like that?
Well, I have certain favorite finishes. Some modified oil. I think that's what I put on this. But I like shellac too. I'm into minimal finishes. And so what you see here and what you feel is the wood. The finish just gives it a level of protection. But it's not high gloss. It's the wood that you're actually seeing that's glossy, not the finish so much. I was thinking about doing some curved cabinetry. And so I have one of those little thumb sketches that, so if you look close, this is curved here. It's like I used a Dremel, and it's maybe 12 feet, 11 feet radius. And so I had done sliding bypass doors. I like them a lot. You can make a lighter looking door. The frame can be lighter because it doesn't have to support anything because it's not swinging out. You don't have to mess with hinges. And I thought it would be really fun to do a bigger cabinet like this one with curves. So I'd finished all this and I got to this part and I thought, well, I better make my mistakes because there was only this little piece of koa here. I better make my mistakes somewhere else.
So what were the challenges, Olm, in creating a curved piece such as this?
Well, usually, the way I usually do those doors is they're longer than the opening. And they're notched at the top and the bottom, or rabbeted. And you stick it in the top groove, it goes up too far, you swing it in, and then you drop it down, and gravity holds it there. And it leaves a little groove up here at the top. And it's just part of the design. But with a curve, you can't get that, it won't go in there like that. And so I had to devise some sort of traveler where it would, because I was thinking in terms of a bigger cabinet, where it would work really nicely, but I could get the thing in and out.
Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, we can see from the back here, because the back, I haven't finished really, the back's not on. Okay. What I ended up doing after I made a couple mistakes was just putting these little travelers in there, and they're screwed in. They're made out of they're made out of lignum vitae, which is a very waxy sort of wood. And so then I can take the door in or out, which, and you're thinking in long terms, you might want to be getting it out someday for some reason. Or, for example, if it had glass in it, you'd have to be able to get it in and out. So that problem led me to do this other cabinet first so that I could make some mistakes there. Because that's how I learned.
That's how it works.
I remembered this, I had this piece of Monterey cypress underneath my house that came out of the graveyard here beside my shop. And I thought, okay, I'm going to pull that thing out. I'm going to just make something out of whatever's there with curved doors, and I'm going to work out my problems on that. And so if I make any mistakes, it won't be on this thing. And so that's what this other piece over here is.
So this other piece we're going to take a look at in a second is the mock-up.
I did a big desk for a client. He wanted a natural edge desk, and I did it sort of in the it's very reminiscent of George Nakashima's work. And so I thought, well, I ought to do some natural edge pieces of my own, you know? And so all at that same time, the stick was found, I got the plank, and so I did that one as a natural edge. And so this one, where I was problem solving, I thought, okay, I'll do a natural edge on that one too. And so that's why this is where the bark was. And I just cut it back so it wasn't a sharp edge here. So this is sapwood, where the actual life of the tree is flowing through here. And then this is the heartwood. And the same as up here. This is you can even see where some of the bark is left. And this is the sapwood, and this is the heartwood. And so the plank it was thin, it wasn't very long, and it was really gnarly. It had this phenomenal figure in there. There's some curl in here and in this part. The other one has the natural edge meeting in the middle. So I really couldn't do that with this one. So I thought, oh, I'll just have the natural edges kissing each other. And so it's very thin, and I just sliced it, and then I just adjusted pieces till they sort of fit. My first thought for the door was that I would have brass tube and brass rod, and that it'd be a little spring in there, and that I could just sort of push them up on their springs and push it in there, and then it'd snap in place. Well, that's what I did, but it didn't really work very well. I basically had to force the thing in, and there's a little rattle of the rod, which I didn't particularly care for. So it was after doing this that that other technique came to mind. But if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't have thought about the other. The magic part about this is the way that the grain works in the carcass here and in the door, where it comes and goes up, and then it appears to roll into the door and come down. You try to have things like that happen, or you think about things like that, but it's really unexpected, and marvelous unexpected things, little things like that happen, that is part of that learning how to see. A lot of people have seen this and they didn't even realize the front is curved. It's pretty subtle, but if you're looking, there's a curve there. So I call this a self-portrait. This is a Vanity 2 self-portrait, and the other piece is a Vanity 1.
Well, they're both beautiful pieces, and I have trouble looking at that and thinking of it as a trial piece.
Well, I did see it through to the end, and it was very trying. There were parts that I had to remake because of just, when I glued it, I was going to glue it up, I did a test fit and something cracked. And I had to replace this side. There's things like that.
And what's that destined to be? What are you going to do with that now?
Well, I think I know somebody that wants it if nobody else wants it at that show. It'll be up for sale.
Okay.
It's pretty idiosyncratic, but I envision it as an entry hall piece. I really like doing things for the entry hall because they don't have to be so functional per se, and they can be more artistic. And what I like to do, I like to think of my work as somewhere between a tailor and a biographer, so that I'm capturing something about the person that lives in that house. So I'm trying to capture them filtered through my design process, something that speaks to them. And so I go to great lengths through sketches, models, or whatever, to get that person to say, yeah, that's great, that's what I want. It's a collaborative effort.
And that concludes today's episode of Woodworks.